They're up on YouTube, and technically we have a quorum. I do know a couple more attendees are planning on coming. So I don't know if you want to wait just a few more minutes or.
Yeah, wait another minute. Should we begin?
Whenever you're ready.
All right. Good evening, committee. I now call the September 21st, 2021 meeting of the Lafayette General Plan Advisory Committee to order. This meeting is streaming live on the city's YouTube and is also accessible by Zoom webinar. The link to log in is on the city's calendar. We'll do a roll call for those committee members in attendance. Staff will read the names aloud. Committee members, when you hear your name, please affirm your presence.
Carol Singer.
Here.
Nimrita Kaslanati.
Here.
Don Jenkins.
Present.
Della Wotherspoon.
Present.
Matt Pease.
Present.
Beth Needle.
Present.
Jim Cervantes.
Present.
Mike Kim.
Here.
Susie Kelly. Absent. Christine Rasmussen.
Present.
And Chris Lee.
Present.
And we have both liaisons. Thank you.
Okay. Would a committee member like to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. The agenda is adopted. Moving on to public comment. We will now take public comment on any item that is not on the agenda. If your comment pertains to an item on the agenda, please wait until public comment is opened for that item. The time limit for comment is 3 minutes. And staff, do we have any public comment at this time?
We do. I will let David Clark in now, and I will also advise if you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen or *9 if you're calling in. David is in the meeting.
Hi, good evening. Chair Lee, I have a comment about SB 9 and 10 and their impact on RENA, and I don't think that's technically on the agenda tonight. So if it's okay with you, I'll make that comment now. But if you'd prefer I wait, I can do that.
Go right ahead.
Okay. As you know, the governor signed both SB 9 and 10. I don't think SB 10 is going to apply to us in Lafayette for reasons we can talk about another time, but SB 9 will. And as you probably know, SB 9 allows a lot split and the potential for at a minimum, probably 4 units on an existing parcel that's currently zoned single-family residence. And if you do the math, you could probably tweak that up to 12, but I don't think we as a community are going to go that high. But let's just say 4. I figure there are about 8,000 single-family residences in Lafayette. And so the question becomes, how many of those will take advantage, if you look at this as an advantage, but how many of those will utilize the what's provided in SB 9? Pick a number, and we can do some research and figure out what the right number is. But if it were 10%, that would be 800 eligible households. And if each of them elected to put two residences on a lot where there currently is 1, 2 times 800 is 1,600. That's a lot of additional units. And I think we ought to use that in our some respect in our RENA allocation. I mean, that would basically more than absorb a buffer, for example. But it doesn't, I mean, those are all fungible. It doesn't have to be the buffer versus something else. Is 10% too high? Well, use 2%. 2%, you get 160, and let's assume half of those do 2 units and half of them do 4. Then you're up to 540 units. The point is, and you can do a quick Excel spreadsheet to see what those numbers are. The point is, I think we should use SB 9 to our advantage and, perhaps cast the state as hoist on its own petard and use those numbers for coming up with our RENA allocation amounts, because they're facts now. So that's my public comment for an item not on the agenda. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
I do not see any other hands raised at this time. So if you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. There are no additional public comments.
Okay, we now have some commissioner activity reports on the agenda. The first is on the Lafayette Homeowners Council, and Matt and Christine will talk about that.
Okay. I'll also have Jim chime in as he sees fit. We all got a letter that was written by the board from the Lafayette Homeowners Council, and I had reached out after talking to Christine to Bill, who's the president, just to spend some time kind of trying to gain some additional insights into what the board was looking at and how they thought about the mission and the vision statement. We met for about 45 minutes to an hour, and it was a good conversation, very professional, very polite. But as you've seen by the letter, that group would like to retain more of the old vision and mission statement than what they saw in the draft. Although they did support this idea of these guiding characteristics or values. We had a good discussion around that. In particular, I'd asked Bill to kind of explain more deeply, what he thought semi-rural meant, because it does mean different things to different people. He, said that, clearly there will be more development downtown. That's probably, if we do development, that's where it should be, but not out in the neighborhoods. That's an area that, truly is more rural than the downtown area. So anyway, it was a good discussion. It helped me gain, some better insights into what he was thinking and what the board of that association is also thinking. Christine or Jim, anything you want to add to that discussion?
I thought it was a very good meeting. Hey, Sarah, is the letter from the LHC in any of our documents that you gave us?
No.
It's not? Okay. When will that be disseminated to the group?
Apologies for that. We can certainly do that.
I mean, certainly get it in before our, sorry, my dog's Excuse me.
Yeah, I'll chime in. Yeah, the letter should definitely be in the packet. It was very thoughtful. I thought it was a really helpful conversation. And it's just as part of the feedback we're getting through this whole process. I thought it was really enlightening. So I'm glad that you were able to set this up with Christine and Bill. So.
Sorry. So Sarah, you said you'd be able to get us a copy of the letter so that everyone can read it.
Yes, I apologize. It looks like it came in this morning at 8. So apologies for that, but we will get it up.
Oh, it just came to you today?
Really?
Why did it take so long? That's weird. I thought they sent it a while ago. Okay. I thought it was last week. All right. Well, anyways, everyone will get it. Good.
Yes, it was last week because you already had the meeting about it.
Yeah.
There's some other letters missing also. Where are these letters going?
So it looks like the one, it did get sent out, but it actually got sent to Joanne Robbins, which is the city clerk, and then she forwarded it this morning. So apologies for that. We'll get it to
Right.
her. And Carol, if there's any others, please let me know.
And can we have that sent out before our next meeting then? If we end up voting for the, I think we have a special meeting possibly. That would be great. I thought it was very informative. I thought it was great. It was good for the homeowners council to share the views of the homeowners councils and associations and neighborhood groups throughout Lafayette. And I thought it was a very productive conversation that we had. And we're hoping that the subcommittee will take our considerations, look at it very carefully. So we appreciated that time that was spent with us.
Christine, can you tell us just an estimate how many HOAs and homes the Lafayette Homeowners Council kind of covers? They're an umbrella organization for other HOAs, is that right?
I think we just actually got a new HOA, our neighborhood group. So I think we're up to what, 58, Carol, is that right?
60.
60 now, okay. So 60 neighborhood associations, HOAs, and neighborhood groups.
So for our viewers, having this letter come from LHC, from the Lafayette Homeowners Council, it speaks for a lot of residents in Lafayette. Okay, any questions on this issue? Nope. All right. Our next commissioner activity report will be from Jim Cervantes. He will be speaking on behalf of the Mission Statement Subcommittee. We're going to hear a recap of the latest activities and then an outline for the work that is going to be done over the next month or two. So Jim, you want to take it away?
Thank you, Chair Lee. So in your packet, there is a memo. It's a 2-page memo with an update on where we've been, where we are, and where we think we're going as on this effort to as the Mission Statement Subcommittee. And attached to that are materials we thought would be helpful for folks to kind of pull it all together, the work over the past, say, 9 months or so that since we've been on this effort. The charter, which was approved back in February after discussion at a couple of meetings of the GPAC. There are materials relating to the survey we did on community values that was out from beginning of May through July 15th. And so we've got the summary information on that and some more detailed layered responses. And then finally, we had a recent survey that closed on the 10th of the draft of the mission statement of values and vision of the city. And we got a couple hundred responses on that. There's some summary information, a couple of slides, and then we've got really more detailed comments from folks covering a wide range of thoughts. And so when you take that, the information from the survey, we had a public session at the end of last month. We've received emails and other communications as just discussed now. It's a lot of stuff to process. So the goal for the committee now is to try to really digest this and honor the responses and thoughtfulness of members of the community and take a look at that and take a look at what we've drafted. And I think I'd like to emphasize it is a draft. We're going to probably likely rework aspects of that. And then we'd like to sort of shoot that back to this committee I'm not sure if we'll get it out later this month. I don't want to overpromise, but I think our thought would be early next month, let's say, with the idea of having a focused meeting of the GPAC in October to talk through the substance of the draft mission statement, statement of vision and value. So we can really have a focused session on that and use the commentary from that and whatever other public commentary is provided to sort of take a look at the document again with the idea of presenting it back to the GPAC in November, whether it's as a part of the November meeting or another dedicated meeting, we'll see. But the idea is to present something back to the GPAC for final consideration, approval of whatever we want to do, so we can in turn get that to the council. That means the council would get it probably later in November, December, which is about the 1 year anniversary of when the council gave us the green light to proceed with this effort. So that in a nutshell is the kind of where we are right now, where we think we're going. There's an agenda item at the end of the meeting to try to figure out or coordinate calendars to have this focus session. And so that was our thought here, is to give you an update on more progress, not get into the substance, because we really need to look at all the comments we received because we want to do them justice. And so our focus will be on teeing up a session later on so we could talk about the substance. And maybe, I don't know, Matt or Namratha, is there anything else that you could think of that I've missed here that you want to add on?
No, I just, we're still getting feedback, whether it's like the session we had with the Lafayette Homeowners Association or the written feedback. Like, we got more of it today. We'll continue to take that in and then also make sure we have a good discussion amongst the GPAC, obviously with the public, hopefully around the 13th, and then start on the redraft.
So that's what I have, Shirley.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Jim or the committee, subcommittee?
Yes, I have my hand up.
Go ahead, Carol.
Yes, Jim, thank you for all this wonderful work, but are these results going to be tabulated in some kind of fashion so we can rank them? I mean, I don't think that was ever done for the July, but now for this latest, there's going to be some tabulation of all these so we can discern what the major comments are, or what? Or do we need to do that ourselves? Or
I guess I would say there is, for the July survey, which is really a 10-week long survey, there is tabulation there, plus more detailed comments, so you can see that. There is
where is the tabulation? I don't
okay,
see it.
so
all the comments are shown,
so
and
it's
the question answer to the questions.
So it's a half-inch package. There's a lot to get through.
Yeah.
There's a tab which says Lafayette Vision and Value Survey Results, about in the middle of this half-inch package. Closed July 15th, total responses 688. And then there's a bunch of graphs that are included which relate to the questions that were asked. So, for example, the attributes of the city. We asked a question, for example, what are your top 8 attributes that should be incorporated into a future vision? It's all there. And then there were several other questions that were asked, and then there was some demographic stuff. And then behind all that are everyone's more detailed comments. So we summarized where we could, and I think that so that's with respect to the July survey. And
I'm sorry, Jim, wait a minute. I don't think what you're talking about. For July, I have the summary, the answers to the 2 questions.
So
and after that are all the responses in detail. And that's all I have. There's no other table.
Okay, so we want to make sure we're looking at the same thing. So what I have, and I have this package printed for me since I have an antique printer at home. But there is the memo, and then there's 2 pages, and then right after that is the charter.
Yes.
Several pages, and then right after that is a tab that says Lafayette Vision and Values version 1 survey results. This is the one
Right.
posted September 10th.
Right,
We have a couple of graphs there, which are, because there were a couple of questions asked specifically,
yes,
Uh,
right,
that does this accurately represent
Right.
my priorities for Lafayette? My vision represents what I envision for Lafayette's future. So those graphs are there.
correct.
You can
I
see the
have
results.
those.
And then we have I guess I'd say the comments that
Yes.
people provided, which is really, I think, what we're going to focus on, because we want to try to get to what people were saying. Those two graphs give you maybe a top level of where people were, but I think for us, the qualitative part of this is really important. We want to try to get a best read we can on people's thinking. So that's something we're going to have to go through. And then after all that, there's a bunch of pages here, Carol.
So on page 42 is when the July 15th
Thank you, Beth.
summary is.
Yeah, and then we get
Well,
to another
yeah.
tab.
Yeah,
So-
may I ask on the first one, my question is, all these responses, are they going to, let's just go with the September one. Are all these responses going to be tabulated somehow?
They are.
They are.
They are.
They are. They're, each one shows what each person responded to the topic at the top. What I'd like to know is how many wanted to change something, or how many, get some tabulation of the meaning of all this.
So can I ask, well, sorry, Namratha, can I ask my question, because it might help say what you're saying a different way?
Okay.
Would you mind? So I was going to ask the subcommittee, how is there value given on, or are responses weighted? And what I mean is, so for example, I attended the small meeting where we broke out into breakout rooms, and it was hosted by different representatives of the committee, and people from the public were able to give their comments on the draft, mission statement and that sort of thing. And what I found is multiple responses that I was hearing were from members of a given committee, and they were saying that they're not there representing the committee, but their comments all happen to be the same comments that committee was also presenting. So how are you guys going through and weighing the different responses? And maybe, Carol, that's what you're getting at. I understand it's tabulated, but maybe weighted is the word you're looking for,
Okay.
Carol? And so I know it's got to be
Yes.
difficult, right, for the committee to go through and figure this out, because if you just roughly add up the numbers, roughly there's been 1,000 responses between surveys, outreach, which is roughly 4% of the population. So just kind of curious, and maybe explaining that might help answer some of Carol's concerns
Anna,
without putting you on the spot.
Yeah, Anna, the way we were thinking about it is that people weighed in from a quantitative standpoint with whether they strongly agreed, somewhat agreed. You see the ratings there, and you can see those ratings. So that gave us the quantitative response of how the 200 plus people thought about the mission statement. The comments, if you read them, which I think a lot of you have, there's additional things that either they would like to add or maybe delete or change. I think it's going to be very hard to put those into discrete categories. There's a lot of judgment area that would have to go into that. But I think they're valuable relative to potentially adjusting the draft. That's where the value comes in, but they're very difficult to quantify because of the way people wrote them. Does that kind of answer your question, Anna?
Yes, yes, thank you. I was trying to help.
Yeah, so Carol, they are quantified. People had to weigh in on whether they agree, somewhat agree, disagree, whatever. But then in addition to that, they gave us qualitative feedback in their written comments.
Well, I don't get it, actually.
What don't you get?
Because if you go to the first table,
Right.
For July. Okay. There's a table. The numbers are given, but they're not in order. You have to figure out that great parks and trails or safe was number one. They're not in order. You have to put them in your own order, 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay.
So if you were to compare that to going through the 200 and how many people sort of said some of the same things, I mean, how are you going to deal with that? Or how are you going to weigh it? As Anna says, you know, a lot of them are from one group or another. And just to say that how does the vision statement accurately represents what I envision for Lafayette's future? Fine, but I would have liked to see limited services or something else. That question is not answered in this chart, and a lot of it is answered in the all the comments. So how are you
Right. So that's my
take that
point.
to account?
But that's my
Are we
point
supposed
is,
to do that?
it's qualitative feedback that residents are giving us. And that is woven into potentially how we redraft the draft. So it's not that they get merged together, but they're looked at, they're both looked at. I don't think you can merge the two surveys together because they
Why
were
not?
done-
Why can't you merge the two surveys
Because
together?
Christine, the first one was done before we had a draft. And they were telling us what their attributes were, and we used those.
You did the draft though prior to the
No, you're
last
wrong.
draft.
No, you're wrong, Christine. We waited, we were looking at the data as it came in and we adjusted it as it came in. So it's not correct.
Okay.
Now you adjusted it. You adjusted what?
We adjusted, I started playing around with drafting something up while the survey data was coming in. We got regular feeds of it. And we probably adjusted it 4 or 5 times until we got to the end of the survey and came up with the draft that you've all seen. So we did take that into consideration. It was not done in lieu of this. And we looked at both the quantitative data and the qualitative comments that we got. Just like on the second survey, we'll do the same thing. There's quantitative data in terms of their reaction to the draft. And then they gave us additional feedback in the statements.
So are you saying then that the first survey, you're not looking at it anymore?
No,
Is
I
that fair
didn't
to
say
say?
that. No, Christine,
I'm just
I did not
asking.
say that. I did
Okay.
not say that.
Because there were certain things that are on the first survey. I was asking if that was going to be applied. Anything coming out of the first survey, would that be applied to?
Not everything will be applied from the survey in the draft, because otherwise the vision statement would end up being a fairly long statement. And one of the design criteria we tried to adhere to is something that was relatively concise and strategic. So we aren't going to put, at least in the draft, every comment or attribute that was listed by people. Otherwise, it would be so long, it would lose value.
Yeah, we're trying to avoid the Christmas tree effect with that. And the thought being that ideally, a document like this is something that lives for decades. I mean, the current mission statement goes back to, I'm not sure exactly when, 68 or 98 at some point, but it's been with us for a long time. It served us well. And ideally, whatever we come up with here, whatever form it takes in the end, that the council approves, and at some point, will be something that lasts for decades as well. So that's why we're trying to sort of like, how do you hone it down to the essence of something and avoid having a page-long mission statement? To me, that'd be an epic fail. And I think with respect to try to summarize stuff, I lived with spreadsheets my entire career. As much as I love them, I don't think that works on the information we gleaned from the recent survey that closed. It's qualitative. And I think, so the idea is to sort of like go through that. And there are observations that folks have made in that There are observations people made in the August 31st session. There are letters and emails we've received, and we're sort of trying to like look at that and see, how does that shape or reshape rather what we've drafted. I mean, that's the challenge here, honestly. Our goal is to get us something which honors all the input we've received and is thoughtful so that we can kind of grapple with that substance, later in October.
Have we received all the letters that you guys have received? Or has that been, like all the subcommittee letters that you've received? Did GPAC get a copy of those too or not? I don't know.
You should have, I think.
You should have. Everything I've
So
gotten.
everything you've gotten, we've got.
Yeah, well, everything I've gotten, I've forwarded either to staff or the alias.
So does that mean we've gotten them? That all the letters that you've received, we've seen?
I think I would like.
You'd have to ask staff.
I think I would just like to clarify that if there are, so just for the public and everyone, general plan at lovelafayette.org is the way to get public comments officially, just so that, I mean, we do pull it from all of our personal emails and everywhere else, but it's just so much easier for us to make sure that we get everybody's comments in if you go to general plan lovelafayette.org. So please do that. And then if it is addressed to someone personally, that is not necessarily a public comment because it, unless they intended it to be and said, I would like this to be a public comment, or I've clarified with them and asked them if it's a public comment. So I just want to be clear about that. So if you want the whole GPAC to see it and read it, then please submit it to generalplan@lovelafayette.org and say, Dear GPAC. That way I know it's very clear that your words are intended for the public setting. Christina,
Don, you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Did you call on me, Chris?
Yes, I did. Sorry.
Okay. I was just curious, seeing that the first response had 207 and the second 688, a city of 20,000+. The sample is relatively small. I realize in sampling, that's the idea. You don't hear from every single one, you extrapolate. But are we going to be doing anything? The whole, I'm reading these and I'm seeing the two extremes of the spectrum. And I'm just wondering who's dealing with the middle. The middle doesn't seem to care enough to take time to say anything, but does that mean they get excluded? Or do we try to homogenize something between the two extremes?
When you say that you don't hear from the middle.
Well, by extreme, I mean Erling Horn has said, leave things just as they are. Semi-rural is the way to go. And then on the other end of the extreme, we see things that are talking much more. Let's open things up. We need to change in a big way. That's my idea. Two extremes.
I think when you read through the comments, that's where I got a sense of this mix, Don, of people that don't, a group that wants to change very, very little, others who want to change a lot. And there were other people that thought, yeah, it's okay, or minor change. You see that spectrum in the comments. And that's where I thought that qualitative comments, at least for me, helped me a little bit to kind of see the different constituencies and how they think about it. It is pretty broad, as Jim said. I think it's going to be very difficult to find a single consensus here.
Well, that's what I'm wondering about. Is our job as the executive here to make a decision and then have everybody throw stones at us rather than try to please everybody?
So I just want to bring
please everybody.
I just want to bring us back to sort of not content, but process. So I just want to make sure we are still just talking. We're just talking about an update about where we've been, where we're going. If anyone has comments or questions about process, so maybe Don, your question is more about, will there be any additional outreach or other ways to reach different folks that haven't spoken up yet? That's okay to talk about, but content, we're gonna wait till we reach the official meeting.
I think there will be additional outreach opportunities. I know Renata and Sarah are working on something for the youth, for the high school population, which has been kind of underrepresented in the surveys so far. And I know we're going to probably still be doing more outreach with with just everyone, but that's one specific group that we'll be reaching out to, because now that school started, it's easier to contact them rather than in the middle of summer. So, yeah.
And for the public, I just want to remind them that even though we have closed the September 10th survey, really the best way to let us know what you think about the draft mission statement is by public comment. And as Sarah said, generalplan@lovelafayette.org. And we are reading those comments. So please send them. Carol, is that a new raised hand? Not sure.
Yes, so you are saying we are not going to get, for instance, what would you add, change, or delete to make it better? Okay, there are lots of comments under that. A lot of people could change something. You could add up what people want to add or change. So we are not going to get a compilation of that from you. Because Matt, you said you read it and you get a sense of the qualitative data, but I can read it and I might get something entirely different.
Right.
So
I get it.
yeah, so we all read it and do our own thing, I guess. Is that the procedure?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we have a committee to bounce ideas off each other and ultimately have the GPAC vote on whether they accept it or not.
Well, I'm talking about the qualitative data and how to analyze it.
Right.
Who's going to analyze?
I just want to ask a question, like, what exactly are you looking for in type of like tabulature of this qualitative data? Are you kind of looking for general like camps, I guess, or like all the feedback synthesized into one box, or what is it exactly that you would like to see?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'd like to see it analyzed. For instance, what would you add, change, or delete to make it better? It says. I'd like to know how many people said add the various things they say.
Mm-hmm. I think
or they want to delete something, and other feedback's very general, but there's an awful lot of it.
I think the danger with that to some extent is that we kind of start putting our own spin, just like those of us who are doing the analyzing start putting our own spin and putting people into categories or into things. People don't use the exact same words, and I think by keeping it qualitative, we keep their own words, so we're not changing their interpretation, so everyone can look at it and get what they're trying to say as opposed to what we think they're trying to say, if that makes sense.
Not exactly. No.
Well, Carol,
Carol, I just wanted to know what you were going to do, because I think that, tells us what some of us might have to do ourselves.
So Carol, I guess I would say, to me, the real risk is in taking all the pages of these very detailed comments and assigning them to specific boxes. If you've got, as many boxes as you've got kind of categories, it's useless in terms of really understanding things. So as an editor, let's say if I went through and did that, I think the accusation would be is that Jim's putting his spin on things, which I wouldn't want to do, but it could be interpreted that way. I think it's better, frankly, in as much as to acknowledge that these are qualitative, they're all unique comments. It covers a range of things here, and it's just helpful to read through them, which is what we're going to do, and use that to help inform us in terms of like how we view the draft that we've got right now. So yeah, it's a bit of a lift. That's what the committee is going to do. We encourage folks on the broader GPAC to take a look at it as well, or at least skim through it. Because in the end, I think we'll have a redraft of what we got. We'll talk it through sometime in October. And I think it'll be, how much does this resonate? And there may be some folks who think that the current mission statement is perfectly fine, and that's great. Or maybe something different. because there's no way you satisfy everybody with this. Is something that Matt was saying, and I agree with. You don't. So we just do the best we can and try to honor all the thoughtfulness that's gone into this thing and respect it and come up with a redraft and submit it to you all for consideration.
Wait for the pitch.
So Jim, I actually was going to say what you just said, which is between now and the October meeting that the GPAC committee is going to have on this, it would really, really help if each member could go through, well, for instance, the survey that just closed, it's only 207 responses. But if you can go through and read what the responses are, the long form responses, that is really going to give you a good idea about how people think. And if you want to go a little further, you can look at how many people strongly agreed and how many people strongly disagreed. Whatever your interest is, if you want to see total opposites, great. If you want to see cohesion around the middle, great. Just try to take a look at these survey results and get a feel for what people took the time to write to us. And I think that will add to the understanding in preparation for our meeting in October. Anybody else have a question or comment? Sorry.
Good. So we'll circle back at the end and try to docket a date to do this. And I think we can agree from just this one discussion that it's best to have a dedicated session on this as opposed to trying to tag this onto a regular GPAC session, in which case would be like a replay of a council meeting and go on until 11 or midnight. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jim. So I have an item on the agenda for myself that didn't make it to the final version, which is my term as chair is coming to an end. In November, Jim Cervantes will take over as the chair. I'll become a committee member, the at-large committee member. And between tonight and next meeting, which is October 19th, I believe, if a committee member is interested in applying or running or being considered for vice chair, please let Sarah Allen know. And I'll just say it now because it's and I'll say it again in the future, but it has been an extreme honor to be the chair of this committee this year with all that has gone on and all the hurdles we've had to overcome. It was just really an incredible process, and I thank you all.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right. So moving to our next item, we have a discussion of the housing element, background data, and narrative summary. Staff?
Great. So we just wanted to bring this back to the group. So we brought this maybe 2 GPAC meetings ago, the background data. And then there were some comments made and we made some adjustments based on those comments. And we attached the red line version of that background data, which we are required to use and include as an appendix in the housing element. In addition to the data itself, there's also the opportunity and desire to have a narrative up front, which kind of describes and tells the story of Lafayette and what we've sort of been doing for housing and what our future housing needs might look like. So staff has established an outline, which was included in your packet to kind of frame that narrative. And so we wanted to get some feedback and buy-in from the GPAC about that outline. And then also we are wanting to incorporate some personal stories. So hopefully we can use your networks to get those personal stories that we can include in the narrative itself. So this evening, we're asking you to, take one more look at the background data, make sure that it is consistent with comments you have previously made. If there are any other comments, please let us know. And then 2, to give us feedback about that outline of what we would include in the narrative. Just big picture ideas. We're not wordsmithing here, but just concepts. And then 3, to use your networks to get those stories. So we do have something up on Engagement HQ already to have people post their stories if they want to do it publicly, but you can also email them. That's great. So it's pretty short staff report. That's what we're asking. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at the packet and let us know if you have any questions.
Sarah, thank you very much, and thank you for all the work in this. I had some comments on the background document. So the idea is basic, and they're not substantive, but just there are a few things. And so I should just shoot you a PDF with my comments. Is that the best way to do this?
If they're not substantive. If they are substantive, then maybe just discuss them now at this meeting.
Yeah, no, they're not that. So I will get you a PDF. Thank you very much.
Sarah, I have a couple of questions. I noticed that we're not able to get the 2020 census numbers, so we have to revert to another way of reporting the population, et cetera. Is there a concern that there will be a big difference that may have to be readdressed when the census numbers come out?
Diana.
I can answer that, I think.
Diana?
The answer to that is probably no. There's not going to be dramatic changes, most likely, because the material that's in the packet, which is required to be used, this is then pre-approved data pre-approved by the state. These are estimates based on a 5-year rolling estimates through 2019. So the idea that they would be dramatically different in 2020 is probably not accurate. So there is no release date yet for any of the data other than that which is required for redistricting. So when you go to their website, it doesn't even have an option to say we plan to have this next year at thus and such a time. So this is the material that we are required to use. Every jurisdiction in the Bay Area has the exact same kind of, almost exactly the same thing that we have to use. So that's all there is.
Okay. All right.
Looks like Matt has his hand up.
Yeah, Diana, I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Is your plan to kind of pull together all these data points and in the front end have some type of narrative that really describes where the city is truly headed?
Yeah, and that's kind of what the outline is intended to do. We're supposed to, the state wants us to tell a story of Lafayette. What is Lafayette like? What are the main issues that are facing Lafayette, and all the specific data points that are required. All that big 70 pages is going to be an attachment to the actual housing element. So we're talking maybe 10 pages or so. It doesn't have to be particularly involved, but we want to be able to sort of describe briefly, because most people are not going to read 70 pages of stuff.
Right. Because when I was looking through all the data, it appears to me, although some data points are missing, there's a narrative you could weave that indicates we've been accelerating the housing units we've been building. You can argue in the past we have this well-deserved reputation of not building very much. But if you look at not the last 10 years, which were blank in there, but the 10 years before, you could see it starting to accelerate and coming closer to the population growth. Do you know, based on the data, is that a narrative that we can actually support to demonstrate to the state that, look, we are trying in what's a difficult set of circumstances, and we're actually accelerating the number of units that we're building to help give us more credibility for our plan?
The credibility for the plan is based on whether or not we meet statutory objectives. Our description of what we have done is certainly important to describe, but in terms of producing a plan, saying those things isn't going to materially change whether or not we get a certified element. We have a list of things that we have to provide. If we don't provide them, then we don't get certified. If we provide them, then we do get certified.
So what's the value of the narrative then? Maybe I'm missing the point.
The value of the narrative, the part that we're talking about, is to paint a picture of what's going on in Lafayette, perhaps in contrast to the broader, like Contra Costa County. How is Lafayette different than other places? Specifically in terms of demographics, in terms of jobs, in terms of these things. What are the sort of key issues facing Lafayette? Lafayette doesn't really have a homeless population. There are only 3 people were identified in the last housing census or homelessness census, and before that there were 0. So homelessness itself is not an issue here. What's more of an issue might be things like income inequality or lack of affordable housing, which is not a, that's not a diss on the city. It's a diss on not having any money to produce affordable housing. So this section is really just to paint, this is what Lafayette is.
Okay.
And there's another section that we haven't really talked about that's called the resources section. We have to go through and list all the different sources of funding, et cetera, that are available for housing and services for people, et cetera, which is what we've done before. And that's also a place where we can discuss the increase in production over the last several years. We can also talk about that in the segment called, that's like the review of our prior housing element. Say how well did we do with this? How many units did we think we were going to be able to accommodate? How many in terms of actually developed? How many we actually got, et cetera. So we can tell some of that story in a different section. This section is merely on what are the needs in the community.
Okay, thank you, Diana.
Sorry, a long-winded answer.
No, good answer. Thank you. Well done.
Okay. We have Christine with her hand up, and then Jim.
Actually, I had the same question as Matt, so he covered it for me.
All right.
Thanks, Matt.
Jim?
Actually, Mayor Candela's got her hand up. I'll defer.
Oh, it's blending into your wall.
Oh, sorry. I'll change the color. I'll make it blue. So Matt did have, that was my same question too. But where do we put in our, Diana, great document. Thank you guys. This is great. Where do we put in our ADU acceleration? So maybe we don't have, where?
I'm sorry, we put that in the resources section, and we will be able to talk about that also in the section on the inventory when we get to that, saying this is how much we now project more ADUs than previously because of all the work we've done to not only just comply with state law, but other things that we've taken on to eliminate constraints.
Okay, so if we can't put in, if the first section isn't where we talk about this, how we've had, like Matt perfectly said, like nothing very much, and then all of a sudden, whoop, we're ramping. Can we at least mention in that first section that we will talk about our recent trends in other sections? And so at least they can acknowledge that we are going to address it, right?
Sure.
And so my comments, are we going to kind of go through these things? But just like a general thing is that there's a lot of places where we put the actual comparisons. We say, oh, this is less, but then we don't say it's less and theirs is 7 and ours is 3, because sometimes it's like, well, ours is less and it's like 6.5 and theirs is 7, So just to get an idea, when we make those comparisons and they're number based, it's nice to have the actual numbers, and so they can understand the degree of separation between how far off we are. Does that make sense?
I'm not really following, because this is simply just a statement of what is, and then the executive summary, this thing that we will be talking about is in terms of the outline, is really the opportunity to sort of say, that particular statistic may mean not a whole lot, but we're required to provide it, and we have to say something about it. What we want to say in this sort of shortened executive summary is what is really important. Like, we have a lot more households than we have jobs, and that's a problem because it means that people are leaving to go to a job, and this creates issues having to do with VMT, et cetera. Those kinds of things we can put. That's the kind of stuff that we're going to put in the summary. Not every table or chart that we put in there really needs a comment. we have to say something about it, but we don't necessarily have to describe it as that important, if that makes sense.
Okay. It just seemed like sometimes we were adding the comparison, like when we compared it to something saying less, sometimes we said less and theirs is blank, and sometimes we just said less. I guess that's what's the inconsistency. So sometimes we did it and sometimes we didn't. And it's just like,
it's just a narrative style. Some of it was pre-populated that I didn't write. Some of this, a lot of it I didn't write. I fixed a lot of it, but a lot of this, it's, again, some of this is such minutia that no one is going to care. And that's why we want to use this sort of executive summary thing to explain more in detail.
Okay, if you did find examples, you could definitely point them out and we can take a look at that.
I will send you my markup. There was
That's
one
great.
error. So go on to Jim and come back to me because I'm trying to find where I found it.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. So Diana, I just want to get a real fix on who the audience for all this is. Is this like some lower level, mid-level staffer at HCD, or who are we writing this for?
The 70-pager is for staffers at HCD to demonstrate that we did what we were supposed to that's required by law. That's
Right.
number one.
So they check the box and
This is a check the box exercise. From this data, out of 70 pages, maybe 10 pages worth of it is worth actually talking about in a sort of more executive summary that people in the citizenry of Lafayette may actually be interested in. But yeah, the 70 pages is ticking a box, but it's from that 70 pages that we need to craft a narrative.
okay. So would useful feedback beyond my various nits be, and maybe for all of us then, if there's certain data points or tables that are meaningful out of the 70 pages,
Yeah.
should be elevated to an executive summary. So getting our sense of what would be useful in that would be helpful in this effort.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, can I have my question? I found it.
ahead.
So it was the contract rents for renter occupied units. So it was on page, I think printed page 43 of the document. And it said, since 2009, the median rent has increased by 52% in Lafayette from 1,590 to 2,090. That's 30%. And so in Contra Costa, the median rent is raised 28.8 from 1,300 to 1,680, which is also about 30%. And the graphs show us at the same rates. And so I just want to correct that our median rate increases has followed Contra Costa's. They start higher, but
I'll look at this. This was verbiage that came directly from ABAG, so I don't know. This is on, you said page 43?
yeah, 43.
Contract rent?
Yeah, contract rent.
I'll look it up and fix it.
So what do you mean by verbiage? Since 2009, the median rent has increased by 52%. That's the verbiage that came from ABAG?
Yes.
Or we wrote?
No, it's
So they wrote that?
Certain parts are pre-populated.
Okay.
They wrote it.
So
Yeah,
it's just taking data off the graph and plugging it in. So we really do need to look at this very critically and see if there's more of that.
We've gone through most of it. I've gone through most of it and fixed a lot of things already, but there are a few things that I didn't catch. So
Thank you.
obviously.
So if there are other things that are sort of like that are kind of backwards, because I noticed a couple things in here that seemed a little backwards, sort of like what Susan's saying. So do you want to hear about those now, or should we just write them to you in a separate email?
Write them to us, send us your comments. If they're non-substantive, then, and if they're like, can you fix this chart? We don't need to talk about it now. We can fix the chart.
So I have a question for you in regards to that, for example, and I had some of my notes in here. So it's got Lafayette, it's got Contra Costa County in the Bay Area. And then, can you add something in there? Could you put in San Francisco or Silicon Valley to show the difference? Or is this populated? We can only use this graph.
This is populated data. We are using the data that every jurisdiction is required to use. The data sets are the jurisdiction, the county in which it's located, and the Bay Area. I do not have statistics on anything like, I would have to go back and redo research to find out the statistics for, let's say, San Francisco. I don't have access to that data.
But they're expecting They're
Sorry?
expecting this exact chart. They want Lafayette, Contra
Yep.
Costa, Bay Area. They don't
Yep.
care
They
how it's compared to any other
They have
cities.
determined that this is the correct sequence of material, and we don't have access to any other jurisdiction's data. This came to us in a packet of a enormous spreadsheet plus this 70-page, well, it was actually like more like 50-page document that we've done more to provide a better understanding and context, although with their data, with some rare exceptions.
Can I just ask, maybe if we understand your goal of wanting to put that in there, then we can try and work it in some other way. Is there?
Well, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, when you compare us to, let's say, Antioch, for example, our housing numbers are going to be different, right? And the amount of increase in price may or may not be different. I don't know that much, but, especially when we're not being able to count the 2020 stuff, when we compare ourselves to something more similar to us, which would be San Francisco, for example, actually our rents are lower than what was going on in San Francisco, for example. So in fact, we're actually cheaper out here than it is in the city, for example. So that's why I was curious to know why, Contra Costa, Orinda, Moraga, Lafayette are probably all about the same, but you can't really compare us to Antiochs or the, farther out in Brentwood or something like that, the ones that are farther out. So that's why I was curious to know where those comparisons were coming from. And if we could put it in, I just feel like sometimes we're being shown in a light that's not very positive because we're being compared with something else that's not similar to us, for example. So if we compare ourselves to San Francisco, we're actually cheaper than that. We're cheaper than them and those housing units in there. So that's why I was just a little curious on where this data was coming from, and if we could make it a little bit.
It would be really difficult to get this data because we don't. This is a massive data set that we do not have access to. We could theoretically request that the same data, but this would be a very large effort and lift for us to do to get that information. We certainly don't have it like Silicon Valley. We would only be able to get county and city jurisdictional data, if that.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the value add would be, frankly, and I think that we can express some of these concerns not in the 70 pages, but in the executive summary of 10 pages, where we can actually say some things that maybe we don't even have. Maybe we have a few data points, but we're not going to redo all these charts in order to add another jurisdiction to it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I just think I don't think it's going to give us any bang for the buck, if you will.
Okay.
So Diana, what is the definition of Bay Area?
The 9 counties in the Bay Area, everything in ABAG.
Oh, okay.
Every
So that
jurisdiction is got its own jurisdiction, the counties and Bay Area as a whole.
So it includes Silicon Valley and
Yes.
Marin,
Yes.
Oakland, Berkeley.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
I had one other question, and I think it was in a comment by the public not too long ago. So the lower income jobs, the ones that were more minimum wage, because there's a chart in here, jobs household ratios, I can't remember, but there's one of them where it compares the lower income jobs to the housing units.
Mhm.
And I can't find it right now, of course not. But I guess my question was, can we account for the amount of students that are taking some of these jobs, like working at C's Candy or, working at the yogurt store? Those kids it's not a living wage for them. It's be able to pay for their cell phone covers and fancy, shoes or whatever they're doing it for. They have a place to live. They don't need a place to live. That amount of money that they're earning from that store is not any part of their maximum output for housing. So is there any changes to the computations in there that reflects the fact that we have a high number of high school kids that are actually working in these lower paid jobs?
No, there is no data available with that. You would have to go to probably either the Bureau of Labor Market Statistics, a federal agency, and pay for a huge study on that. We don't have any of that data that's drilled down by who actually is occupying those jobs.
Thank you.
Matt, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, on the draft outline for the background data narrative summary, you talk about, highlighting demographics, and then later on down about production of housing units over time. Are you mapping that against, okay, for example, let me back up. On demographics, are you showing how that's changed over time? Or is it just a point in time?
I think some of the information is going to be change over time. I think we have really interesting data that shows that Lafayette has become much more diverse than it was originally. Right. I think that's a good data point to share. There are things like that I think people would really respond positively to understand how communities do change in positive ways. So yeah, there are some things in there that we will definitely, and if you have ideas about that, about which kind of data points of like over time data points you think are really helpful, that would be great. Yeah,
I'll send that to you. The other one is on, you talk about under demographics, character, and that's a loaded word.
Right.
And I'm wondering, what did you mean by that? Or are you looking for suggestions?
Sarah, you answer that one. You wrote it.
That was definitely something I added just because I know that it is really important and valuable to the community. We've heard a lot of comment around that. You're right. It's hard to define, but I think this group is up for it.
Okay, so you're looking for some feedback that we can give you of how we might define character.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I'll put in my feedback is I'd like to stick to kind of physical characteristics, because otherwise it become quite debatable. But fact that the fire danger, that's a characteristic and that's a character of our town that I think is not very debatable. Hillsides right up against the freeway, right. Hard to debate that. So I'll give my comments, but they're going to be more physical as opposed to we love doing things certain ways, which I think probably isn't interesting. The final thing is on the data highlights on housing statistics. Diane, would they be interested in the fact that the production over time compared to population growth? Because to me, that kind of tells the story. Depending how far you go back, it's not a good story. You can argue we didn't produce enough relative to population growth, but I think recently you start to see that uptick. And I think that is a good story. Is that something that they would listen to?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. If you can consider that, and I'll put it in my written comments later.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's mine.
Hey, Don?
Yeah, isn't the big concern here, though, that the affordable housing aspect is the big bugaboo, and it's so difficult to when you're looking at the income spreads and the price of homes in this area, trying to reach into that lower quadrant is very, 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 very difficult. And I'm not quite sure, other than Section 8 housing or some kind of governmental supported housing, how do you get to that when you're looking at the price of land, the price of every structure being what it is in this community?
That's one of the issues that we'll be definitely discussing in the constraints section, which talks about non-governmental and governmental constraints to the development and preservation of housing. And I think the number one issue is the cost of development. It's cost about in the Bay Area on average approximately between $700,000 and $800,000 per unit to build a unit, which if you don't have $700,000 or $800,000 lying around, you can't afford it. So we have to discuss that and discuss the potentials for, what are the resources that are still available? For example, tax credits are still available to reach lower income. So that's something we'll definitely be talking about. Not per se in this section, because we go into a deeper dive on constraints in a different section.
Is the idea of, when you look at the population, so much of the housing that is now occupied by seniors could be opened to other things if in fact the seniors could find a way to exit comfortably.
Yeah.
But there is no way other than to die. And, that takes
Put
time.
too fine a point on it.
Not too far. No, but I mean, the reality is you get a stepped up basis at first death.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to rush. And so you just wait. And I'm ready to downsize, but I'm not going to give you $300,000 in capital gains tax if I can wait till that.
So one of the things that we will talk about are some of the best practices of how to address things like people who have a much bigger house than perhaps they need. Those are that'll also come in the resources section, some of the best practices work.
I was also going to mention that I thought housing for people with disabilities and senior housing seem hard to attain for Lafayette.
Yes.
Los Pampas is doing a wonderful job right now trying to help a few, but that's a small.
Only going to get bigger. Let's see, we have Jim and Christine and, okay, I'm not sure who went first.
Christine went first.
All right.
See, I had a question on page 41, the home and rent values. It says, by comparison, the typical home value is 772,410 in Contra Costa County, and then it says 1,077,230 in the Bay Area, with the largest share of units valued at 250 to 500,000. And then it says county, and then it says and 500,000 to 750,000 region. What does that mean?
I believe that this is talking about the number of units in a particular price range rather than the average or median. The region would be the Bay Area as a whole, and the county is Contra Costa County.
And are they talking about the same size housing unit when they're making these comparisons, or are they just saying housing units in general?
That I don't know. I can definitely ask them, but I'm assuming based on the data that they provide, I believe this is ACS data from 2019, so I will inquire about it.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because it, once again, it's making Lafayette look like, we're really expensive. But if they're looking at a condo or something like that at the $250,000 range in Pittsburgh, let's say, and I'm just using that as an example because their land prices are less. And then, it's comparing apples to oranges. And I just want to make sure that everything's being compared the same fruit, so to say. Thank you.
Okay, Jim.
Thank you, Shirley. Diana, Dawn raised a point that I've been sort of struggling with, having to do with, I guess I'd call it the affordable housing gap, which maybe we can touch on in this summary memo. When you look at the delta between the cost to build and what people can afford at various income levels,
right?
The numbers are huge. And if we're looking at 599 very low income units in RENA, then that number is in the hundreds of millions. And I've done only a back of the envelope, but my bigger concern, and maybe this goes well beyond the 10 pages of the executive summary, is that absent meaningful funding sources for affordable housing, we're being set up to fail on the very low and low income categories, because there's no way it can happen absent hundreds of millions of dollars of subsidies. So, okay.
We're on the same page.
Okay, so.
And we'll say that.
Okay, good.
And often.
Yeah, so maybe then this 10-pager in the front is something we just should note that. We could do the math. This is what it costs to produce a unit in Lafayette. And here's the gap at these different income thresholds. So I think that could be helpful, and we will say it and say it and say it.
I have all the math. I've done it. I've got a spreadsheet.
It's got a spreadsheet.
With the assumptions, and with the assumptions that it only costs $600,000, and we get 20% inclusionary on our other units, which is optimistic,
Yeah.
we need $660 million
Okay, that
to
makes
fund
sense.
the gap.
160 million.
To fund the 500, the very low income or very low and low?
All the ones that we aren't going to get from our inclusionary,
Okay,
right? To fund them both. Yeah.
intuitively that makes sense. All right, good. Or not so good.
All right. Anyone else have a comment at this time? No? Okay. Sarah, I guess we'll open it up to public comment.
Yes.
Again, if you would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Comments are 3 minutes at length. And do we have anybody waiting?
David Clark is, oh, I thought I promoted him and there he goes. Okay.
Okay, this will be a little different than what you've just been talking about, but two of the items in proposed housing goal number 1 are infrastructure investments to mitigate impacts of the demands of housing development. So I'm not sure exactly what kind of stories you're looking for, but if you wanted to give them a story.
Hi, David. I think, Sarah, were you trying to?
Yeah, we're talking about the first item, which is the background data and the summary analysis, not the goals. I don't know if your comment sounded like it was about goals, which is the next agenda item, which I really hope we get to because we need to. Do you have something on the background data or is it goals?
Yeah. I mean, that was my way of introduction, what I was going to say. So
okay, I will start your timer over.
I thought you were looking for stories, right?
Yeah.
Personal stories.
Yes.
Okay. So what I was trying to do was, I think we have a story as a city to tell if we wanted to address this item. And what I was trying to justify the addressing this item here is by citing a goal. But the story is, within the last year or 14 months, we as a city, and that includes members of the Creeks Committee, the Design Review Committee, the Planning and the City Council, everybody has approved 2 springing easements and granted another easement and another condition of approval, all of which address that goal that we haven't got to yet. But we could write a story about those successes if you think it's a slightly different bent than affordability. Well, it is a different bent than affordability, but if you're looking for some variety in there in terms of the types of stories we could tell, that's a good one, it seems to me, or it could be. Those springing easements they're novel, and we did it. So I don't know how much you want any attaboys or pat on the backs in there, but
can you explain a springing easement?
Yeah, 950 Huff. The easement at the back of that property does not come into play until something happens, and then it springs into existence. And there's something that would have to happen is the availability of a similar easement on a parcel on either side of that parcel. So until that, and it has a life. It has a life of 50 years. That one has a life of 50 years. So if nothing happens in 50 years, it goes away. But there's an incentive for us to do something within the next 50 years. But so that's one. There was another one at Madison Park that same thing. It would allow access from a creekside trail, which obviously has not been built yet, out to Golden Gate Way. Same kind of drill. So it's contingent on something happening in the future.
And these are easements associated with creekside trails. So I think that, thank you for that, David. If there is any other public comment, please use the raise your hand function, bottom of your screen, *9 if you're calling in. I don't see any other hands raised at this time.
Okay, so we'll take it back to committee. Anybody have any further comments, questions on this topic? Okay, I don't see anybody with their hand up. So we'll move to the next agenda item.
So I just want to bring some closure to this. I think we were asking the committee to take a look at the background data and sort of give staff the go ahead to kind of forward that to the Planning Commission to give us feedback and comments on the outline of the summary, which we will come back to you with a draft of that. And so if you have any comments, please email them that you haven't spoken about. I did write down some notes. If you haven't spoken about, please email me those those comments for the draft summary. And then please use your networks to reach out for stories. And so I guess maybe I just want to circle back to the first part, which is the background data. We do have some additional notes from folks, but whether or not the committee is ready to move this along to the Planning Commission.
Okay, and do you have a deadline for these comments that you would like to set?
So as soon as possible. I think in the staff report at the back end of the staff report on page 7, there's sort of a chart that talks about when you would need to get us comments for the next meeting so that we can incorporate it in the staff report and it's kind of in there. So that deadline of October 11th, certainly as soon as possible would make it easier on staff.
Okay. All right, so moving on to our next item.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I just saw another note that I had a quick question, I think, for Diana. Sorry, I want to ask this before I forget. So in the 6.3 seniors 57, it talks about senior households often get experience of combination of factors that can make accessing or keeping affordable housing a challenge. Could we mention that a lot of the seniors here are still here because of Prop 13? And that's how they're staying in their homes?
So I think we definitely were including that as part of the narrative up front.
Is it? Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was brought in there because I think that's really important that some of the seniors are here for that reason.
Can you reference the page or the chart?
I was looking at page 57, 6.3 seniors, because it says seniors who rent may be at greater risk. So I just thought it was important that we asked that. Prop 13 was very helpful to keep that age group in the community. So sorry to do that. The rest I'll submit. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay. And also, Diana, is there a place where we can mention that the capital gains problem is another reason why seniors may be living in 3 and 4 bedroom homes and they would like to move and free up a house, but
we could definitely do that as a non-governmental constraint.
Mm-hmm.
Then they'll just take away Prop 13.
Either or.
Yeah, guys, I think we're weighing into something that maybe we shouldn't, whether it's the Prop 13 issue or the capital gains issue, because we as a group, I'm not comfortable taking a very highly charged political issue position, which doesn't necessarily reflect the views of our citizenry. So I would suggest we stay away from those third rail politics issues.
Agree.
Okay. Jim?
Thank you, Shirley. So I and others have a few comments on the background information, minor. And looking at the memo again, I think the idea was to forward this on to the Planning Commission. So if that's the intent, absent like minor changes, if there's nothing of substance, I guess the question is, should we then vote to forward this on to the Planning Commission? Or, I mean, Sarah, I'm looking maybe at you because this is the memo. I want to make sure we're responsive here.
Yes, that would be the ideal. Yes, at some point we do need to move things on to the Commission.
Just to move this, I'm wondering then maybe a motion to the effect of approval to forward the background data to the Planning Commission with staff to incorporate non-substantive changes forwarded by GPAC staff by October 11th. I mean, something like that would be, I think, the gist of a motion.
Right. In addition to whatever we spoke about this evening. Yes.
Right. Okay. So I'm just to move the ball. I move that we forward the background data document to the Planning Commission with staff to incorporate comments from the GPAC at this discussion session and any non-substantive comments provided by GPAC members by October 11th.
Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. We'll do a roll call vote.
All right. Carol Singer, Namrata Kasanati,
Yes.
John Jenkins,
Yes.
Stella Witherspoon.
Yes.
Thank you. Matt Pease,
Yes.
Beth Needle,
Yes.
Jim Cervantes,
Yes.
Mike Kim,
Yes.
and Susie Kelly is absent. Christine Rasmussen
Yes.
and Chris Lee.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay. Just doing a time check here. It's 7:30 and we have just a few more items. We have a presentation on housing elements, goals, policies, and programs. Sarah, do you think that's going to take 45 minutes?
Well, that's what we had budgeted. I think it depends on whether or not the group has read through and been as prepared with their comments this evening. We do really need to actually agree upon some goals and the criteria for the programs. We can't really move forward without it. So, and I know we started this conversation at the last meeting. So I'm really hopeful that we actually can agree on those so that we can really start the work and the progress.
I would like to continue just because we're going to be spending time on the mission statement in future meetings. So is there anybody on the committee who cannot stay for 45 minutes plus a few minutes to take care of other updates?
Here, this is Anna Radnich. I cannot stay on for another 45 minutes or an hour, just to let you know. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, likewise, I have to jump off in 15 minutes.
Okay, that still leaves us with enough people, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to go at 8:30.
Yep, we should be done by then.
I might have to drop off too at some point, but I'll try to stay the whole time to keep the quorum.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
And
And
we have a
Shirley,
quorum.
I also need to drop off at 8.
Okay, let's see. So go ahead, Jim. You had a
I was going to say, I don't know if you need a motion, but maybe just go to 8, but maybe we should do this item to calendar the mission statement discussion now while we have everyone, because we're going to start to lose folks.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that if the committee is comfortable with it, we can do a special meeting to just talk about this other item if that is preferable for everyone, but we do need to make some progress on getting these things together.
Yeah, I vote for a special session because I think it's meaty enough to where we need to all pay attention to it.
Okay, so is there any discussion from the group? Sorry.
So would we jump straight to staff updates if we move number 7?
Correct, and we would work towards finding a special meeting date.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we'll move number 7 to a future agenda.
Okay. So then let's do a quorum check let's first do the mission statement meeting. So dates we had chosen were either October 14th or October 21st. And I guess maybe we'll just, Renata, can you do maybe a roll call and we can just have you say yes, yes, or no, yes, or whatever for each of those dates so that we can just establish a quorum. And you can call the names and I'll.
Real quickly, October 14th is the LHC information night.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a different date that we can pull? Or are people comfortable with 10/21? If not, speak up.
So maybe we check to see if 10/21 works. If it does, we're good. And otherwise, we can look at the 28th.
And I'm just going to pull up the city calendar too, just to make sure there's no conflicts there.
I don't see anything yet.
And the 28th, I'll be out of town, but I can call in.
I was gonna say, I don't hear any opposition to 1021
Yeah.
from this group.
Right.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we'll do that for the mission statement. And now let's find something for the special meeting for the goals and program criteria.
We can try next Tuesday, 28th.
I won't be here, but we could do that.
I will not be here.
What about October 5th?
That's a DEI task force meeting potentially.
Okay.
I'm still going.
But what about the 6th, October 6th?
6th is Transcirc.
I can't do it.
Right.
I'm back east then.
Oh, the 12th?
That's the city council meeting because the Monday is a holiday.
Oh, missed that. Thank you.
The 13th?
October 7th?
We could do the 7th. Yep.
I can't make it. I'm back east that week.
Did we talk about October 13th?
That's a design review commission meeting. However, it might be canceled if there's not enough items.
City council.
I think we could make the 13th work.
Okay.
Is this something
Let's do
that
the
we
13th.
could use a doodle poll for to establish a
Sure.
common?
That could work. Can we just see if people are available on the 13th? And if so, then
Definitely.
establish that now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
13th?
Yes.
Objection?
Should work.
Okay, great. Excellent. So 6 o'clock on the 13th for the goals and program criteria, which you already have a staff report for, so we wouldn't be creating a new staff report for that. And then 1021 for the mission statement, which you will receive a new report for.
Okay.
What is the date for the goals
The 13th of October.
of October? That's city council meeting.
No, 12th.
The 12th city council meeting. 13th is design review commission, but we
okay.
have enough staff to cover both.
And both of these are at 6.
6 p.m. for both meetings. Yeah.
And we've got the regular GPAC on the 19th, right?
Right. Yes.
So it's a GPAC trifecta those 2 weeks. So.
Do we need a motion to move item 7A to a special meeting?
Yes, let's do that.
So moved.
Second.
Roll.
All right. Carol Singer,
Aye, but I have a park and rec meeting that night. Okay. Aye. For the vote.
Namartha Casanati,
Yeah. Yes.
John Jenkins,
Yes.
Stella Wotherspoon.
Yes.
Thank you. Matt Pease,
Yes.
Beth Needle,
Yes.
Jim Cervantes,
Yes.
Mike Kim,
Yes.
Christine Rasmussen,
Yes.
Susie Kelly is absent, and Chris Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And then we just wanted to let you know that the CEQA process is proceeding. They're doing a lot of background information, background data, but it is in progress. I know you haven't heard anything for a while, but it's coming along. And then also same with the opportunity sites. So we are doing we are reaching out to those individual groups to see if they would, or individual owners to see if they'd be interested in aggregating their parcels as one aspect of that, and working towards finding the opportunity sites, which will come back to you in early next year. So both
Okay.
of those are making progress, and just wanted to make sure that you knew they are.
Right. Great.
And Chair Lee, it looks like we do have one public hand up. I'm not sure if it was for a different item, or I don't know if you want to entertain.
Okay, well, it looks like the last item was item number 6A, so that would be public comment for that. So we'll listen.
So it's Janine.
Okay.
Hi, this is Janine Crow, and I wanted to concur with the gentleman, I don't know which one it was, who said to leave the Proposition 13 issue off whatever document you're providing to.
Janine, we can't hear you.
Oh, we can't hear you, Janine. Oh, did we lose Janine?
I think we did, but I did hear the first part of her comments, which was that she agreed with Mike Kim about not having political issues in the narrative.
Okay. Okay, good. So is there anything else we need to cover before we adjourn?
I think that's it for tonight.
All right, great.
Could I just ask one quick question?
Yes.
In the packet of material that was public comment, there was information from Save Lafayette that had a chart or map, and then an indication of how many new units and jobs lost this information come from. I realize it came from Save Lafayette, but I mean, what's the authority? Does anyone know?
And Narup has that information. I've asked of it before, and that's one of my comments that I just sent off to them in that background information, is that their jobs, all the jobs information in that background document only go to 2018. And so since then, we've lost a lot of jobs, right? And so if we could supplement that, the data we know we have for projects that have been like, they started, it's not like we've approved them, but if we can include the recent job losses, it'll change the numbers, that jobs to housing ratio, I think pretty significantly. So I'm hoping that you guys will update that to reflect, and then also possibly project how many projects we've already approved and what our jobs to house ratio may be if they all get built. I put those in my comments, and hopefully they will include that.
Okay, so I could be in touch with the author of this information and perhaps ask a question.
Narup has them. Narup has all these numbers. I've
And
asked.
Narup has this information. Oh,
yeah, that's the source of all this information. The city has the information.
Oh,
yes.
okay. That's what I'm asking. Thank you.
Okay, great.
But it doesn't, that report, it doesn't talk about job creation, temporary and permanent from these projects either. So it's not balanced.
Right.
Fair.
Yeah, my thought was it might have been job displacement, but not a job loss. So it's hard to capture that as well.
Right. What's important to know is a net.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Absolutely true.
Okay. Any other comments? Good. Well, thank you all for all the problem solving that we did tonight, and look forward to seeing you at